Welcome to the Plain Faith Podcast, Episode 13.
Late one night in 2013, I cried out to the Lord on my way from work. And at that moment, I heard about mission aviation. And it was just like that. But knowing that I could use my skills, my talents, the gifts that the Lord had given me to bring people the gospel, to bring people joy, oh my goodness, I just thought, wow, I love flying. That's my passion, and I can use that to bless others. Wow, I was just amazed.
The Plain Faith Podcast is a podcast about missionary aviation and the stories of missionary aviators who have taken seriously Jesus' command to go and make disciples of all nations and are using airplanes to be His witnesses at the ends of the earth. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Your host for today's show will be Jimmy Tidmore, who, in addition to hosting this podcast, is a pastor and a pilot residing with his family in what is known as the Rocket City, Huntsville, Alabama. He is very interested in promoting missionary aviation and helping prospective missionary pilots reach the mission field. And now, with these introductions out of the way, let's get started on another great episode of the Plain Faith Podcast.
Welcome back to the Plain Faith Podcast. I'm sorry there's been such a delay since our last episode, but maybe you've seen that we've had a lot of exciting stuff going on over the past few months behind the scenes here at Plain Faith. One of the purposes, often an unstated purpose, behind this podcast from the beginning, and one of the primary convictions behind Plain Faith in general, has been related to our desire to help missionary pilots overcome the flight training debt that they often build up while working to become qualified to serve with one of the many great missionary aviation organizations out there. We've always felt like there was something wrong with individuals finding it necessary to take on enormous personal debt to be obedient to God and to carry out the mission of the church. And we've wanted to do something about it. Again, this has really been behind everything we have done at Plain Faith since the beginning. Well, over the summer months, we began working toward forming and establishing a nonprofit organization with these sorts of things in mind. And we got all that paperwork finalized and submitted by a law firm specializing in those sorts of things back in August. I won't go into the details here. There are more on our website, which has been significantly updated as well. But suffice it to say, we have been pretty busy over the last several months. But in October, I did have a pretty cool opportunity to go to Nashville, Tennessee, where I was invited to speak at the annual Missions Day hosted by Nashville Flight Training, which is an awesome organization, by the way, operated by believers who are also serious about missionary aviation. And if you're in that area, you should definitely check them out. And in fact, the guest on my show today used to be a flight instructor there. That is how I connected with him. His name is Erick Paradizo. And as you are about to hear, he has a super great story to share and an amazing testimony. This episode is a little bit different because Erick is currently working with MAF stateside in a few different roles, but he and his wife and their 2 sons hope to be transitioning very soon to Ecuador. One of the reasons I was particularly interested in talking with Erick, though, is because I suspected that he might have a very fresh perspective on the process between finishing flight training, getting on board with the missions organization, and then being deployed to the mission field. And in that regard, I was correct. If you are thinking about going into mission aviation yourself, you will not want to miss Erick's description of that process. It is simply fantastic. Well, I won't keep you waiting any longer. I hope you enjoy the episode. If you do, please let us know, and make sure to check out our website to get some more details about what we have been up to and learn about how you can be a part of it. We definitely need some help in a variety of different ways. Well, Erick, let me welcome you to the Plain Faith Podcast. As you know, I had the opportunity to speak a few weeks ago at the annual Missions Day at Nashville Flight Training, and that ultimately led to me hearing from those guys about you and your family and your call to missions. And I was grateful that they helped me connect with you, and I look forward to hearing more about your story in our time together today. So let me begin by thanking you for your willingness to join me on the show this day.
Oh, thank you so much, Jimmy. I appreciate you inviting me to the podcast, and I hope that I could be an encouragement to those who are listening today.
Yeah, I am. I'm absolutely sure that you will. Why don't we begin by letting you tell us where you are from and where you grew up?
Yeah, so I am from a small island of Puerto Rico, a small town in the south called Ponce. I grew up there. My family is still there as today. I moved here now to the United States, but once in a while I visit, and I really enjoy being here. It's a little cold here, but I love also the humidity and the warm island as well. I have two sisters, and I have been married to my wife Joanna for the last 4 years. And I have two kids. Their names are Archer and Baron.
Archer and Baron. Those aren't
Yeah,
airplane names, are they?
that is correct. Those
Yeah.
are airplane names: Viper Archer and Beechcraft Baron.
All right. So tell me about how you became a follower of Jesus.
Yeah, so that is a long story. I was raised in a Catholic home with no real knowledge of the love of Christ. Growing up, I learned how to work hard at painted cars with my dad at his auto body shop throughout my childhood and teenage years. And then I went to college and graduated with an aviation degree in management. But during that time, I was very depressed. uh, I struggled with alcohol from an early age. Um, my dad struggled with alcohol, and we grew up very isolated due to some things that happened at my house when we were young. It really separated me from people, really made me feel like I had no value in life. And for the longest time, I was very depressed, and I used alcohol as a medicine for my depression. Um, so anyway, in 2012, I moved to the. I was already living in Nashville, Tennessee at that time, working towards being an airline pilot, and I was getting a good handle on English. Uh, I was moving forward in life, but I was still crippled by depression and alcoholism. I didn't think my life was worth living at that time. I went through a series of things that happened in my life where I lost my job, I lost a relationship I was in, and I really thought, you know, I don't think, I think this is the end. Obviously, my background as a uh, Catholic, it didn't give me a relationship with Christ, so I never had, I never prayed to God. I never really felt like he was listening either. We prayed the Lord's Prayer since we were kids, and that's all I learned. But I met a friend in Nashville at that time in 2012. His name was Steven Sevitz, and he was actually my supervisor at a work at a job that I had at that time. And he will look at me at times, and he will know I was depressed and I wasn't doing well. And he was Christian, and he will ask me, "Hey, I see you're struggling. Can I pray for you?" And I never have any problems with that. I always feel like, yeah, sure, that's no problem. And he will lay his hands on me and he will pray for me. And no one had ever done that for me before. Um, it really changed my life. It really made me feel like my life mattered at that point. Somebody, for the first time, made me feel love, made me feel like, wow, I this person really cared for me. And anyway, that job was in 2012, but I moved forward and I work at other places. And but I kept my relationship, my friendship with Steven Sevitz. And when life hit pretty hard, I did not know what else to do. And I remember being on four walls on a room at my apartment and thinking, well, I could do two things. I could even end my life right now, or I will call Steven Savitz and ask him about that God that he has, that he believed on, because I remember they were so happy. There were people that had joy in their hearts, and there were people who care for others. And I remember just feeling like not really wanting to end my life. I really wanted to pursue something else. And I contacted Steven Savage the next day, and I asked him, "Hey, can we can we meet sometimes? I would like to talk to you a little bit about what's going on with my life right now." And Steven said, "Come over to my house, have dinner with my family, and I don't know if you'll be okay with this, but we'd love to read the Bible at the end of the day. I would like to tell you more about, my God and everything." And I said, "Sure, let's do that." And we had dinner with his precious family, him, his wife, and at that time there were 3 kids. And I really enjoyed that time with them. And then at the end, we read the Bible. And for the first time, I was just there listening, and I felt very encouraged. And I did that every night for about a month. And the summer was coming, and they really felt the need to invite me to live with them. And they told me that at the end of the month, I was already with them at their home reading the Bible every night. And they say, "Hey, we really felt like the Lord is calling us for you to live here with us." I could not believe it, because they did not have a room in their house for
Mhm.
me to stay. But they really felt it. Look, there's a couch, and we can totally make the room available for you, and get the kids away from the living room once in a while so you can sleep until whatever time you want to. But I really felt that night that it was great for me. I should I should done that. And I said, yeah. And all I have was a baggage that I brought from Puerto Rico when I moved here to the States. So I didn't have much with me. So I moved with them in May 2012. And a month later, June 13, 2012, I was on my knees giving my heart to Christ. And that at that same moment, Jimmy, the Lord took away that struggle with alcohol.
Hmm.
It was no longer a desire that I had to drink, something that I could not do it on my own, to be honest. I tried so many times and I could not. But the Lord just took that desire away and put a new desire in my heart to follow Him. And I stopped drinking then, and it's been uh, since then that I have not drank any. So it's been 8 years. Um, And the depression, though, took some time. It wasn't something that the Lord took away, just like He did with the alcohol. And the Lord was building a new testimony in me. Um, I was kind of confused why the Lord will take this desire to drink away, but I was still kind of like dealing with the depression. And now that I look back, I remember the Lord brought a lot of people from that church, from the church I started going with the family that I was living with. The Lord brought a lot of people to my life, and it took away that isolation that I grew up with. It took away the the feeling like I could not trust anyone, because my dad, as very young, he treated us in a way where he made us feel that we had no value, and the Lord wanted to restore that in my heart. The Lord wanted to really work on my heart to know that I can trust people, and but overall I could trust Him. So I started getting away from that isolation and trusting others and allowing them to pray for me for that depression and everything. And it took a period of about 3 to 4 years until I was eventually free from the depression, and I am so grateful that the Lord did, because for the longest time I struggled with, and but the Lord is good. The Lord did it for me because I chose to follow Him.
Amen. What a great testimony. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
So summer of 2012, you become a follower of Christ. Where does your call to missions fall into this story?
Yeah, so I was amazed that God would choose someone like me, and I I always thought about this verse, Isaiah 41, 9 through 10. It says, I brought you from the ends of the earth, and I called you from its farthest corners. And I say to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you, and I have not rejected you. So do not be afraid, for I am with you. Do not fear, for I am your God, and I will strengthen you, I will help you, and I will hold on to you in my righteous right hand. I was just amazed that this verse was such an encouragement to me as a young Christian. And I knew that God saved me, but I really wanted to know my purpose in life. So late one night in 2013, I believe it was March 2013, I cried out to the Lord on my way from work. I was just driving and it was late and I was just like crying out. And I remember specifically telling the Lord, Lord, I will give up whatever you want me to give up. I want to follow you. What do you want me to do? I want to know. And at that moment, I heard about mission aviation, and it was just like that. And I did not know honestly what mission aviation was. So I had to go home and Google it.
Hmm.
And after I Googled it, I found out about mission aviation fellowship, and I was very surprised that there was such a thing. I was a new believer as well, so I was still knowing about missions and what that entail, and but knowing that I could use my skills, my talents, the gifts that the Lord had given me to bring people the gospel, to bring people joy, to oh my goodness, I just thought, wow, I love flying. That's my passion, and I can use that to bless others. Wow, I was just amazed. So that happened late, somewhere around March 2013.
And so, where were you at in your flight training process? I know you said you first learned to fly in college in Puerto Rico. Where were you at? You were in Nashville, new believer, wrestling with what's my purpose. Were you still working on flight training at that point?
Yes, so I wanted to be an airline pilot, and that's what I joined aviation just because of that, because I wanted to become an airline pilot since I will say 6 7 years old, and at that moment in 2013 when I felt the call for missions, I was already a commercial pilot. I was living in Nashville, and I was pursuing getting my CFI at that point. But we have fire also that happened at our home. The family that I just shared with you, I was living with, we had a
Hmm.
fire where our house burned completely.
Oh
And
man.
I was working towards getting my CFI, and I have made this huge binder with lesson plans
Yep.
because that's one of the things you have to do as CFI. And they all burned on this fire,
Oh no.
and all my aviation documents and everything. And I was just, I could not believe it happened, and I didn't know what to do at that point. So I thought, maybe I should not go for my CFI. Maybe I should just try to find a corporate job, something that I can start flying a light multi-engine and just build my hours that way. Because I
Hmm.
never really felt like I could be a teacher either. But the Lord provided, and I was able to get my CFI later in 2000. I think it was 2014, at the beginning of 2014, actually.
Okay. Hey, Eric, if you don't mind, why don't we rewind a little bit and why don't you tell us about your whole flight training process back from where you began it back in Puerto Rico?
Sure. I began flying in 2007 at a Part 61 school, small school in the north of the island, San Juan, Puerto Rico, and got my private on a 152. Then I got my instrument on a Mooney 305 rocket, which is a Mooney MT. I think it's a M20 kilo with a conversion on their engine for 305 horsepower.
Hmm.
So I went from a 152 to a
Yeah.
Mooney that was too fast. I was behind the cockpit most of the time,
Right. Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
but I really enjoyed flying it. And then after that, I moved to the United States. I moved to Nashville, Tennessee. mainly because I wanted to pursue aviation as a career. So I knew I needed to learn English. So I moved to Nashville. I went to another Part 61 school, got my commercial certificate there in 2012. Then I got my CFI 2014, and in between then I got my multi-engine at some point in 2013, I think it was. Um, it was I would say the training in Puerto Rico could have been better. I had good instructors. I have other instructors that were not the greatest, but I did learn from each one of them, and that was a good experience for me to see different perspectives and different instructors, different teaching methods, and things like that. And I will say, getting my certificates through Part 61, um, the the best thing I did was to get my CFI, and that is a Certified Flying Instructor certificate, and that is because the technical evaluation at any missionary organization is very, I would say, is difficult, to be honest, and you do have to have some good training background. So my CFI helped me so much to gain that experience I needed to have to pass the technical evaluation.
Okay, that was actually going to be my next question is do you have any advice for someone who's in flight training to become a missionary pilot? And so the CFI has value, not just because it's a means to help you build hours, but because the preparation for that helps you prepare for your technical evaluation as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and it depends. If you go to a missions school, it's different. You know, Moody Aviation prepares you very well for that kind of
Mm-hmm.
flying that we do. So maybe it's not that important that you get it if you get your training through Moody or Laterno or Liberty, you know,
Okay.
all these places. But since I got it through Part 61, they did not prepare me for missions. You know, that is totally different. And I needed to gain my experience in a different way. So CFI was very valuable if you're doing it through Part 61. And it is very valuable even if you do it through any mission school, but it's not recommended to join uh, any mission organization. You know, MAF doesn't they recommend it, but it's not required. That's what I meant.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Any other advice for someone who's in training and looking toward being a missionary pilot?
Well, advice I will say the truth is you don't want to give up. Just keep going. I know it's expensive, and just looking at it might make you think, I can't do it. This is too much money, too much of my time. It for what I heard from missionary pilots, they takes a long time. But I'll tell you the truth, this has been a, an amazing journey. I will not change this for anything. It has taken me a long time, uh, and it, yeah, the money was something that you look at it and you think, man, I can't do it. But if the Lord called you for missions, the Lord will provide. The Lord will provide, and He will open also the doors. And um, I cannot emphasize enough that it's very important to not give up, to just walk. The Lord is setting the course for you, and it's going to be good.
All right. Good advice. So you talked a little bit about your call to missions and how that took place. I wonder if you have any advice for someone. You know, I don't know if you had it was something that you wrestled with for a while, or if it was just sort of a Paul on the Damascus Road experience for you, where you just knew. But I wonder if you have any advice for someone who may be listening to this episode and who's currently wrestling with a call to missions and maybe missionary aviation.
Well, I will say seek advice. Don't do this alone. There's a lot of help out there. MAF have advocates all around the United States. We have recruiters as well. Don't try to wrestle through these alone. Seek advice, and there are a lot of people out there that have experiences, and also they can help you through it to connect with other people. Like just even listening to this podcast is good. If you're already listening to this, you're on the right path.
Okay, I appreciate that plug for the podcast. Thank you. Um, All right. So let's talk about MAF. If I understand it correctly, you're currently working and preparing and raising support so that you and your family can make a transition to Ecuador. Tell us about where you're at in that process. And I guess while you're at it, could you describe that whole process to us? I know that many of the folks who listen to this show are planning to become missionary pilots as well and have lots of questions about what happens between finishing their flight training and getting to the mission field. And it sort of seems like you're right in the middle of that and could give us a good firsthand explanation of it, at least from someone going through it with MAF. So, yeah, could you tell us kind of where you're at in the process of getting to the mission field?
Yeah, right now we are living in Boise, Idaho, where MAF headquarters are. And I work at the office as an assistant safety manager and director of safety for US 135 and Central Asia. And I also work as an instructor pilot um, here at the headquarters. Um, we joined the organization back in 2018. Well, let me back up a little bit. We actually joined the organization as an intern, mechanic intern, in 2017. And we just wanted to kind of see if this was a place for us. We really felt the Lord leading us towards MAF, but we wanted to kind of like test it. We wanted to make sure that this was the right place. So we did the internship, and I really needed that internship anyway because um, I didn't have enough experience as a mechanic. I just came fresh out of school, AMP school, and so it was a 6 month internship, and after that we did our technical evaluation. So the process started basically you contact a recruiter in your area for whichever mission organization you're feeling called to join, and they will tell you what are the pilot qualifications and the qualifications also as missionary to join the organization, and you get prepared. Basically you start getting ready and building all those requirements and qualifications, and you stay in contact throughout that time. You stay in contact with the recruiter. He will visit you at times, which he was very nice for us. He got to visit me when I was single, and then he got to visit me uh, when I was engaged, and then after we got married, he and my wife got to know about MAF as well because of the recruiter. And so once you finish with all your qualifications and everything, we also had to get the 12 Bible credits uh, that were very important for MAF to have prior to join the organization. And we we moved here. We did the internship. You don't have to do an internship if you don't want to, but we did it just so I could build the experience and get to know the organization. And then after that, you take a technical evaluation. And basically, a technical evaluation, you can call it it's like a 2 week interview. If you are a pilot mechanic, you will go through 1 week flying and another week maintenance. So they test you. They give you knowledge test. They give you oral test. They flying test, maintenance test, and also a psychology test too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, and throughout that time, is just to see if you are prepared to join the organization. Once you pass the technical evaluation, you are invited into candidacy, and the candidacy is the process where they will take you. I think it's a month process, and they take you through 2 weeks of getting to know the organization and obviously all the paperwork, and also you get the assignment to a country at that time, and then the last 2 weeks of that candidacy is training you to raise support. So we have to raise our own support, and they will teach you how to do that, at least here at MAF. And then they will let you go, and you have to pretty much. At that point, it's important actually to know that you are with MAF, and I think you only work for MAF during that time,
Mm-hmm.
because raising support takes all of your time. And so yeah, they let you out there, and you go and raise support. You have a coach that will help you through the process. So you every week you contact your coach, and they'll help you uh, um, through the process. So we went out there raising support, and then it takes about, I'll say, 10 months to a year to raise all your support. And everybody's different. It could be that it takes 6 months for others. We
Mhm.
actually have one of our in our class. We have a one of our friends. It took only 4 months.
Oh wow.
So we were very encouraged. Like, wow, that's amazing. So and then after that, you come back to MAF and you do what they call standardization. And basically, that is a period where you're gonna be flying. It's a training period. Basically, you go flying and they teach you how we do MAF stuff. Your how do you do MAF checklists? How do we do the mountain or terrain setup or terrain flying? And it's a very intense training, but he really is really good.
Mhm.
Um, if you're also a mechanic, they give you also a training as a mechanic, how to work on their PT6 engines for the turbine prop, and if you're gonna depend on where you're going. If they have piston engines, then they'll teach you how to work on the piston ones. Um, and then after that, you do some security training to prepare you to go overseas, and you do some orientation, and then you're out to the field. And the first thing that you do once you go overseas is to learn the language. So they send you to language school. So once you learn the language or um, finish with the language school, they send you back. You do final training, learning how to fly the Kodiak or the 206s or the Pilatus, whichever plane, the Caravan. We have Caravans as well. So um, and then you're back to the field and you start flying. So it's a long process, but the Lord is faithful throughout that time. And I'll say this: building our support, just raising our support, just letting people know about our ministry, and it's such a great experience because those people are praying for you all the time. These people are just with you. They go with you to wherever you go. And I say this. It was very intimidating at first, but then it was actually it's just a blessing. So yeah, that's a process with MAF, and right now we are we are not in the field yet. For us, it will be Ecuador. We're not there yet. We are working at the MAF headquarters because of our son health issues. But our hope is to go to Ecuador next summer.
Very good. That was an outstanding explanation. I appreciate it. Um, so you said that during the process, your destination is selected for you. What sort of role did you play in choosing that? And so how did you end up with Ecuador? I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so during the first 2 week of candidacy, we began to pray a lot about, okay, where the Lord is calling us? Where do we really feel we want to go? And we prayed and we met with the country directors because they come during that time to share about their country, and we were able to to hear about the country directors in every base that we have. And we really felt like Latin America was one of the places where we have passion to go. Obviously, I know the language already is Spanish, but that wasn't actually what really made us go. Because actually, my wife is American. She's from Tacoma, Washington, so she had to learn the language anyway.
Hmm.
But we really felt like we wanted to go to Ecuador, and we heard the story of the five missionaries there that got murdered in 1956, and the amazing story of how the indigenous group came to know Christ and got transformed by that. And we just felt like, wow, that's just we want to go there.
Hmm.
So we were able to. MAF allows you to just pray about it, obviously, and they will listen to you whenever you have a country that you feel like going. And we did. We told them we feel like we wanted to go to Ecuador, and at that time they have nobody. At that time they had no missionaries from the United States in Ecuador, and they really felt like, wow, okay, there were everybody right now in the Ecuador program is a national, and maybe bringing a person from the United States will help then to keep the safety standards and everything there. So they felt, after they prayed, they also felt they wanted to send us to Ecuador. So they told us, hey, this is where we feel also you guys should go. So
All right. So tell me what does a normal day look like for you right now?
normal day for me is I come to work and because I had three different roles. I am at the office at times, and I work as an assistant safety manager. I take care of the hazard reports that are sent by every one of our pilots mechanics around the world. And it gets to our office. I read them. I make a risk assessment, um, and I assign it to the person that pretty much needs to take care of the the issue. So we is very important for MAF and any other mission organization should have this same mentality. It's important for us to to do our job well and to do it within our safety standards because we share the love of Jesus Christ through aviation and technology so that isolated people may be physically and spiritually transformed. It is important that our pilots do our jobs well and to get the plane to their destination and land it safely. If the plane never gets there, the gospel never gets there. So that's what is so important, the safety job that I do here, where the pilots, send their hazardous reports and they say, "Hey, this happened to us while landing at this airstrip," and that way we can know and we can follow up with, okay, how can we do? What can we do right now to help this airstrip, to help this pilot land this airplane safely in this airstrip?
Mhm.
This airstrip might not have a fence and is allowing a lot of animals to come into the airstrip. Big animals. If the airplane hits the animal, it will get destroyed. And that is a resource the Lord has given us, and we want to use it well. We want to make sure, okay, if this is what is going on, let's go ahead and build a fence or something similar to not allow these animals to come into the airstrip so the pilot can land there safely and not be afraid. Um, also, when I'm not at the office, I work as an instructor pilot. So that is actually a recent position that they offer me here at MAF, and I'm actually very excited because I work as flying instructor for around 3 to 4 years, and I I really have a passion for it. I never thought I could be a teacher, but doing flying instruction was such great ministry. I'll say it's probably one of the best I had. Like I remember just praying for my students. I remember just giving up, giving all of me just so this student can learn and go fly safely wherever they go. And just to know that MAF saw that and the Lord opened the opportunity for me to do that again is just such a blessing. So basically, the kind of job that I do is a little bit different as an instructor pilot. So basically, um, MAF, um, well, let's say it this way: foreign students that come to the United States to join MAF, they have their foreign license and they want to join MAF, but it is very important for them to know that they have to have their FAA certificate to be able to fly in any program with MAF. So what I do, I take the foreign students that want to join MAF, I help them to through the instrument and commercial, and they get their FAA certificates, and then after that they will go and join MAF and go with the country of assignment. So it's kind of like a different training.
Mhm.
Uh, it's something new that we started to do. So I'm still learning the position, but I really love it because I get to be part of their journey. These are people that have been called to the mission field,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm able to help them to get there, even though I am here in the States and we are not able yet to go to Ecuador. I'm just about, it was just a great time for me to be able to experience these in a different way where I'm able to, like, to be honest, it's almost like I feel peace now because for the longest time we've been here already for 2 years or almost 3 years, and I felt plenty of times discouraged because we were not in Ecuador, and we really felt like the Lord called us there. And so plenty of times I kind of felt like, God, what's happening? Why you're not? I thought you called us there. Why I am working at an office
Mm-hmm.
and not even flying an airplane, you know? And but the Lord was good, and right at this time, He brought this new position where I'm just flying again and able to be part of other people's journey to the mission field.
Yeah, so you can already see and feel I am making a direct impact on the missions work of MAF right now because
Totally.
yeah, that's good. All right, so what about the types of planes that you're working with and flying and training it with at MAF right now? Tell me about some of those.
So the airplanes I am flying right now is a Cessna 172 that we just got ready to go to one of our programs, but decided to stay here to just so I can do these FAA certificates with the foreign students. And we also fly the Cessna Turbo 206. Is most of the time what we use here at the headquarters. There is a Kodiak here. I have not flown that one yet.
Yet.
Yeah, not yet. Yeah, the plan is for me to at some point do some of those flying.
Cool. So what tell me about you mentioned you learned initially in a 152 and then you went to that Mooney. What other types of planes have you flown and do you have one that you'd say is your favorite?
Well, my favorite is the J3 Cub on floats. Um, that is my favorite airplane to fly. I went to Jack Brown School back in, let's see, this is in Orlando. It was in 2012 actually,
Yeah.
and I got my seaplane rating in a J3 Cup on floats. And I say that was that was the most amazing time flying I ever have. No doors, no communication, just landing on every lake in Orlando, Florida. It was just a lot of fun. So um, that's my favorite plane to fly. My favorite plane is a DC-3,
Mm.
but I never flown one of those. And yeah, I've flown just 152s, 172s, Piper Archer, Piper Arrows, Cessna 310s. Um, yeah, I've flown plenty of them. I'll say this: I do not have my tailwheel endorsement yet,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll love to get it at some point. I've flown a Citabria and a Kit Fox,
Mm-hmm.
but I would love to get my tailwheel endorsement someday.
Yeah. So in my truck right now, there's a card for a guy that's sort of local that he instructs out of a Cub with floats, and one day
Oh,
I'd like to do that as well.
you have to. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I've flown in the Citabria as well, and I never finished the endorsement, but it is very different. It's constant work. It's constant work.
Yeah, I know. It's when I flew the, let's see, it was a Citabria wasn't that bad. I flew the Key Fox, and the Key Fox was using a lot of rudder. But I know as the horsepower gets higher, it's more complicated than a tail dragger.
Yeah, also back to the float plane thing. I was watching a video on YouTube a while back, and I don't guess it ever occurred to me that you can't just there's no brake. I mean, you can't stop. And
Right.
that sort of hit me while I was watching this video of this guy doing training. And it's like, oh yeah, I mean, you're heading in a direction constantly. So
Hmm.
that seems like it'd be a fun challenge to learn. So maybe one day I'll have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, how about telling us some of the, flight training is not a walk in the park, right? Tell us about some of the struggles that maybe you had. We all sort of have that one maneuver or something or some period of time where we're struggling. Do you have some stories of some struggles you had? And it may have been with a maneuver. For sort of mentioned the financial stuff already, how it's expensive and that can be hard, or failed check ride or anything like that you'd want to share.
Yeah. Actually, I got an interesting story. Um, I struggled with motion sickness.
Oh,
Um, so I started flying when I was actually a kid. My grandfather is a pilot, just a private pilot, and he would take me flying over the island of Puerto Rico, and it was a lot of fun. But I remember from the time I was just 5, 6 years old, he'll take me flying, and I will get really sick in the airplane, and that transferred to when I started flying in 2007. So I started getting my private pilot certificate, and every lesson I'll get very sick. And I'll have so as a part of my pre-flight, I have a bag just ready because I knew I was gonna be very sick. So believe it or not, this is crazy to believe, but I went through my private certificate, all the training I did, all the way until my check ride. I got sick,
mm,
and on my check ride, I flew to another town to meet with the examiner, and it was bumpy already, so I was kind of feeling already sick. Anyway, after that, I get in the airplane with the examiner, and obviously I'm nervous as well.
mhm.
So I get in the airplane, I go flying, and I get very sick, and I tell the examiner, "Can you take the controls for a moment?" And he looks at me like, "What do you mean?" I said, "I just don't feel well right now. Can you take the controls for a moment?" And okay, I had the flight controls, and I grabbed my bag, I threw up in my bag, I closed the bag very well, I put it right where I used to put it, and I said I had the flight controls. And he looked at me like, "What just happened?" Well, what do you mean you had the flight controls? We should come back. And I said, "No, I'm good now. Let's go. Let's keep doing it." And I did all the maneuvers, did everything. He said, "No, we can come back if you want to. We can finish this another day." I'm like, "No, I'm fine. Let's do it." And we finished check ride. I passed the check ride, no problem. And so that went also to my instrument. I didn't have the same experience to instrument where I was taking a check ride. I got sick, but I
Yeah.
I got sick a lot. Um, so that was very unique. Now, I'll say if one of you who are listening to this podcast struggle with motion sickness, do not give up because I actually continue flying and it actually went away eventually.
Yeah.
It's just about training your brain. But it, it takes some time. If you feel discouraged right now because of that, don't let that be the reason of why you stop your training. Just continue going. The Lord is calling you to missions if you and he will he'll do it. I'm telling you, I was so sick. I tell my wife about this sometimes and she's like, "I can't believe you kept flying."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I really love flying." Like so yeah, I didn't feel good, but I just like it. So
Hmm.
so anyway, motion sickness was one of the things that was a struggle at that time. Financially, for me, I had to fly once a week because I was paying for it cash. So what I would do, I had like two full-time jobs, and I will pretty much work a lot, and then paid for it as I go. So I paid for my training as I go. So because of that, it took me longer.
Hmm.
It took me from 2007 to 2014 to get my CFI, so that's about 7 years. But it was about 5 years from the time I start flying to the time I go my commercial. So it took me a little longer, but I'll say that was a struggle financially. Just having to just pay as I go, and also I don't know if this ever happened to you, Jimmy, where if you don't fly for, if especially if you're in training, if you don't fly every like 2 3 days, when you
Yeah.
come back, it's like relearning again. You're
Right.
just learning the same lesson over and over.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what happened to me a lot. So, but I did it. And I see now that God was helping me through the whole time. He was preparing me for missions. I just didn't know it then.
Yeah. I mean, I think, most instructors will tell you it's ideal if you can fly very regularly, so you're not having to redo that stuff that you learned in the last lesson because you've forgotten it. But but there, like you're showing right now, there's different paths for different people, and
Hmm.
if all you can do is fly sort of irregularly, it's better than not flying at all, right? And
Yeah.
I think it was this is sort of related. It just popped in my head. I don't know if you ever heard this before. I think it was D.L. Moody. Maybe somebody was on him about the way he was sharing the gospel, and it might not be D.L. Moody, it was somebody on him about
Hmm.
the way he was sharing the gospel, and he said, "You know what? I like the way I share the gospel better than the way that you don't share the gospel." And so, I like the way I'm doing my flight training better than the way that you're not doing flight training. It might be something that
Yeah.
we can say sometimes as well. So if there's only one path, it might not be the most efficient path, but if that's your path, take that path, right? You don't
Hmm.
have to do it the way somebody else has done it. And hey,
Yeah.
man, the story about the motion sickness, I think a lot of people need to hear that because that is a common problem, and sometimes people
Yeah.
do quit because they don't think it will go away. But
True.
it can go away if you keep doing
Yeah.
it, and it's neat to hear you say, that's the logical thing. Well, why in the world would you keep doing it like your wife thought? And you said, well, because I love it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's awesome. So tell me, obviously you have some perseverance that helped you keep going, but tell me about family and friends that were helpful to you and have been helpful to you along the way.
Yeah. So the Sevitz family, that's a family I lived with for a while. They were that's my, I call them my adopted family, and obviously my family in Christ. But it's just, they were so loving to me. They taught me so much through the time I was just a brand new believer, and they were always pushing me into like, hey, look at God, but God, what is He doing right now, and when I felt the call for missions, they were very encouraging, and they're like, yeah, go ahead and pursue it. If that's what you really felt the Lord is calling you, pursue that. And at that church I was going at the time in Nashville, we had a lot of friends at our life group, and they're also very encouraging. At the moment, I still have my mentor. He's actually from that church, and I call him every Saturday. We talk about what the Lord is doing, things like that, and it's very encouraging. I'll say, you know this. I'm my pastor here as well in Idaho. It's just, he's a person I can always go and talk to. I'll say my family in Puerto Rico, it's they, and this is something I will share because I think it's important, because I believe, and I have seen it already in other friends. My parents disagree with the confirmations. My parents don't believe, obviously they're Catholics, and they don't believe that God can call you to something like this, and they're very afraid of what could happen to me
Mm-hmm.
and my children, and and this is a very important thing to always give to Christ, because for me it could be very discouraging at times to know, I have my family, my wife, my friends, and everybody is like so exciting about these confirmations, and but my parents are not, and I have to look at times to God. Well, not at times, but all the time. I have to give it to Him, because I don't want to live my life based on what they think.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I do want to be a good son to them,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to also speak the gospel to them, because they need it. And how can I speak the gospel to them knowing that you know, they're mad at me going and following Christ? to the mission field. So I would say it's very important to have mentors in your life that you can speak about and just share about that, and to be okay with them not being okay
Mm-hmm.
about it. So
Yeah, I don't. I think the situation with your parents is not one that's all that uncommon. I've heard before some people make the claim that the biggest obstacle to the mission field is often sometimes someone's parents. Um,
yeah.
and it's not because their parents don't love them or don't want
Hmm.
what's best for them. It's because they do.
Hmm.
They just have a different idea about what's best.
Yeah.
But I think it's good for people to hear that, hey, sometimes your parents are really going to disagree with
Hmm.
this. And it doesn't mean they don't love you, but
Hmm.
it also doesn't mean that you should abandon what God's calling you to as well. It's just a difficult
Yeah.
thing to work out. So there's a pastor friend of mine. He's a bit older than I am. But he was telling me a story about his mother-in-law was in the Southern Baptist world. There's something called the WMU. And his mother-in-law was president of that in her local congregation, right? Well, he and
Hmm.
his wife, this lady's daughter, started feeling called to the mission field, and he said she pitched the biggest fit about it. And he's like, "This is so ironic, that you are head of this missions promoting unit at your church, but as soon as your daughter feels called to missions, all of a sudden, you're not in favor of it."
Mm.
And so again, it just goes to show that's sort of a common thing that people deal with
Yeah.
as parents. So
Yeah, I think that, and just, if you didn't grow up in a, it could happen to obviously if you don't grow up in a Christian home, but it also can happen, like you said, if you grow up in a Christian home and they're like now afraid of, like, wait, you going where? Where are you taking our grandchildren? Like
yes,
that's a big thing.
yeah, absolutely. And again, it's not because they don't love you, it's
Yeah.
and care about you. It's because they do, and
Hmm.
but nonetheless, that can be an obstacle. And as children, we do. I mean, there's it's biblical, to respect your parents and honor your parents
Yeah.
and so forth. And there's this tension there about, well, how far does that go? And and I think it probably is safe to say that just like with our submission to other authorities in our life, it goes right up to the point where they're asking you to disobey God. And at that point, it doesn't mean that you don't love them. It just means I'm going to respectfully disagree, and I'm going to follow
Yeah.
where God's leading me. And I still love you and still respect you. And this is not disrespecting you. This is me being faithful to what I feel God's calling me to.
Amen. Hmm.
All right, Eric, we'll start wrapping up here. Do you have any final suggestions or advice or encouragement for prospective missionary pilots?
Yeah. So I would say, if you are really feeling called to missions, go ahead now and start letting people know about this calling that the Lord has given you in your heart, because you have to start raising support once you join the mission organization that you feel called to. And I think that if you start doing it prior to even join it, it will it will save time, so it will get you to the field faster. But also, it's just about bringing those people with you, making it part of your journey. For me, as a flying instructor, I will tell my students all the time why I was a flying instructor at the flight school I used to teach.
Yeah.
And some of them were not believers, and that's totally okay. Some of them will tell me, why would you do that? Why would you not even get paid to do what you do, or something like that? And some of them has a misconception about it. But I will say, I feel called to, and that's a great ministry right there. It opens
Yeah.
opportunities to have great conversations with others. And I will say, when I joined the organization MAF, those students contacted me and told me, "Hey, I know you. I remember you telling me about your missions, and I'm so excited that you finally did it. How can I help you now?
Wow.
How can I support you?" You know, and that was such an encouragement. It was so good to see those flight students to come on board of our ministry, and some of them, one of them actually became an advocate for MAF, and
Cool.
also got saved. He got so he got saved. Then he got baptized. He invited me to his baptism in water, and I was very surprised to hear more about his testimony because I didn't know a lot about it. But he, and then right after that, he just became an MAF advocate, and I was just like, wow, the Lord is just so good. And I'll tell you this testimony also. I shared about missions, about my call for missions when I was working at the fly school, and one of the mechanics um, got to hear about it, and he thought, "Wow, what a cool thing that you're doing!" You know, there's a guy that comes once in a while. Is a guy that works in a Snap-on, selling the Snap-on tools.
Yeah.
He comes to the truck once in a while here. I was wondering if you need, tools or things like that. And I said, you know what? I actually need tools. I don't have any tools with me to take because I was just fresh out of AMP school.
Hmm.
And and he said, well, how about when the guy comes in the truck, you talk to him about it. So okay, sure. I talked to the guy at in the truck about my confirmations, and he said, well, how can I help you? I said, well, you know what? I'm thinking about raising support just to buy my tools. I
Hmm.
said to him that day. And he said, oh, cool. I said, so let me talk to my wife and I'll get back to you about maybe just buying one tool. I just want to start like being obedient to God in this like raising support thing I never done before. And maybe let me get with my friends together on a Saturday and my wife and I can play worship and share about our calls for missions and maybe we can plan on raising support to buy just a torque wrench.
Hmm.
And everybody was like, "Oh, okay." I mean, he was very excited about it. And we did that. We actually made a event on Facebook and we got our friends together on a Saturday and we got to raise some support for a torque wrench. Well, later I knew that this guy was the guy that drive the Snap-on truck went to a car dealership in Nashville, Tennessee, and talked to the manager there and told him about me. And the guy said, I really want to help this guy that is one. He wants to be missionary, and I really want to help him to get more tools from me. Um, what do you think we should do? And the guy at the car dealership in Nashville said, well, okay, well, who's this guy? What's his name? Tell me more about him. And he said, oh, his name is Erick Paradizo, and he works at a flight school in Nashville. And can you believe the manager at the car dealership was my flight student?
No.
He was my flight student, and he goes and tells the guy, "Well, that's my flight instructor. I've been taking lessons with him for some time already. I didn't know he's raising support to buy tools." And he's like, "Wow, I can't believe it either. But how can we help him?" My flight student calls me that same day and say, "Hey, can you come to the car dealership tomorrow with your wife? We want to hear more about your story." I go there, I share with them about my story, and they said, "How can we help you?" And I tell them, "Well, we need tools to take with us to the mission field so we can share the gospel and help with airplanes and everything." And he said, "Well, how much money you need?" And I just gave him an estimate. I was like, "I don't know. I think maybe around $3,000, $5,000. I don't know." And he said, "Okay, well, we'll help you. We'll help you with that." And I didn't know exactly what that means. He just
Hmm.
said, "Well, we'll help you with that." That was on a Wednesday. On Friday, they contact me, the Snap-on tool guy and my student. They get with me on Friday and say, "Here's a check for $5,000
Whoa.
to get all your tools." And the Snap-on guy on top of that put an additional $1,000.
Wow.
he said, "I'm gonna give you some discount on my tools, and I will add to that $1,000 so you can get the tools you need." So in a day, just because I said,
Yeah.
we need tools, and I really need to let people know about what we're doing, just just like that, my tools were all donated. I have all Snap-on tools donated to us, just like that.
Yeah.
What a blessing! The Lord is so good.
Yeah. And because you were flight instructing and doing a good job with that. And um, yeah, that is a really, really cool testimony, I think, and also some really good practical advice as you're flight instructing. Use that as a ministry opportunity, and
Hmm.
the fact of the matter is, some of those people may end up being your supporters as well. So yeah,
That's true.
that's a cool story. Is there
Yeah.
a book that you'd like to recommend to our readers? It could be something about missionary aviation or something that helped you grow in your Christian walk. It's something that helped you learn to fly, and you can name more than one, even if you want to.
I don't have specific books other than obviously the FAA handbooks to learn how to fly,
Yeah,
but but the book Through the Gates of Splendor,
yeah,
uh, it's a great book of a missionary story of the people in Ecuador in 1956. That is an amazing story, and I would recommend that book to anybody that is called for missions.
okay, yeah. That's a must read, isn't it?
Yeah.
Jungle Pilot as well tells, I guess, that
Hmm.
story from a little bit different angle. It's a good
Yep.
one as well. Was there anything else I haven't asked you about that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I think I talk a lot already.
That's a podcaster's dream. Somebody that talks a lot. So I appreciate it. Oh, well, how can our
Uh,
audience be praying for you and your family?
um, Jimmy, I'll say if you guys can pray for my son Archer. He was born with a major birth defect back in 2018, and he's gone through 13 surgeries already. He's only 2 years old,
Mm,
and it's been very hard. And so, if you can pray for him, he has some other surgeries he needs to go through in the next few years, and I appreciate if you guys pray for him. We have another son, so they're twins, and he's doing very well, and we're grateful for that. But pray for him that as he grows, that we can share with him, with both of them, the gospel, but also that Baron will be a sweet brother, and that will help Archer
yeah,
through all those bumps.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, pray for us that we will, especially for me in this new position, flying now almost every day. Just pray for safety as I go fly and teach the guys out there. And for my wife, just pray for encouragement, as she's a stay-home mom, and during this COVID-19 season, it's
Mhm.
difficult to get together with other friends, and so she finds herself at home a lot,
Yeah,
just just wanting to do something. But a lot of people are obviously, we have to be careful with the COVID-19 and all that, and our
right.
our son with his health issues, we want to protect him as well. So
Okay. Well, definitely be praying, and I know people in the audience will as well. I appreciate you sharing those things.
yeah, no problem.
How can people connect with you on social media or elsewhere to learn about you and your ministry, and maybe even become a financial supporter?
Yeah, so we are on Facebook. You can find me by Erick Paradizo Rivera. I have two last names, so
Hmm.
ErickParadizo and my wife is Joanna, same last name, Paradiso Rivera.
Okay.
And we are also on Instagram by the Paradizos, and also we have a page on Facebook
Okay.
named the Paradizos. I think it's Paradizos on missions to Ecuador. And if you pray and you feel led to be a supporter, we have our website through MAF is maf.org. facebook.com/Paradizo, Paradizo, and that's a way for you to get our newsletters and to become a financial supporter.
Okay, and I'll get those links and put them all in the show notes on our website and in the notes for the podcast episode. So anybody who wants to connect with you in one of those ways can do so.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, well, Erick, I really do appreciate the time together today, and I've enjoyed hearing your story. You have a really powerful testimony, and I would just encourage you to keep finding ways to share that. I think it will resonate with a lot of people that have similar struggles, and particularly during this difficult time we're all going through, not just here in this country, but around the world. It seems like your story could encourage someone who's struggling with depression and alcoholism and so forth, that there is hope in Jesus Christ, and
Amen.
You're evidence of that. So I would encourage you to keep sharing that. I know that you do. But other than that, man, it's been great. I hope we could stay in touch with one another. We'll certainly be praying for you and your family.
Thank you so much. And thank you, all of you who are listening. And I hope that you're encouraged by testimony. And feel free to contact us if you have more questions. And even if you're struggling with something similar to why I struggle, I would love to talk to you.
All right, Erick. Thank you, and God bless.
God bless.
Well, that's it for this episode. We thank you once again for listening. You can learn more about the podcast and subscribe to it by visiting plainfaith.com. That's PLANE faith.com. You will also find links there to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And of course, Jimmy would love to hear from you personally. So feel free to email him at jimmy@plainfaith.com or by using the contact form on our website. Until next time, remember that God made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God.
The intro and outro music for the Plain Faith podcast is a song called Chipper by Kevin Macleod. You can find his work at incompetech.com.